Now, we've gone through the highlights of the precedent, and I think it's important that you know, as Lead Manager Raskin mentioned, that scholars overwhelmingly who have reviewed this same precedent have all come to the same conclusion, that the Senate must hear this case. Let's go through just a few short examples. To start, all of us, I know, are familiar with the Federalist Society. Some of you may know Stephen Calabrese personally. He's the co-founder of the Federalist Society. He actually was the chairman of the board in 2019. He was the first president of the Yale Federalist Society chapter board, a position that I understand Senator Hawley later held. Here is what Mr. Calabrese has to say. On January 21st, he issued a public letter, stating, "Our carefully considered views of the law lead all of us to agree that the Constitution permits the impeachment, conviction, and disqualification of former officers, including presidents." And by the way, he's not the only one. As Lead Manager Raskin said, President Reagan's former Solicitor General, among many others. Another prominent conservative scholar, known to many of you, again personally, is former 10th Circuit Court of Appeals judge, my circuit, Judge Michael McConnell. He was nominated by President George W. Bush. He was confirmed by this body unanimously. Senator Hatch, many of you served with, he had this to say about Judge McConnell, that he's an honest man. He calls it as he sees it, and he's beholden to no one and no group. Well, what does Judge McConnell have to say about the question that you're debating this afternoon? He said the following: "Given the impeachment of Mr. Trump was legitimate, the text makes clear that the Senate has power to try that impeachment." You heard Lead Manager Raskin mention another lawyer, Chuck Cooper. He's a prominent conservative lawyer here in Washington, has represented former Attorney General Jeff Sessions, House Minority Leader Kevin McCarthy. He issued an editorial just 2 days ago, very powerful, observing that scholarship in this question has matured substantially, and that ultimately the arguments that President Trump is championing are beset by serious weaknesses. Finally, we've gone through a lot of scholars. I'll finish on this one. There's another scholar that I know some of you know, and some of you have actually spoken with recently. Up until just a few weeks ago, he was a recognized champion of the view that the Constitution authorizes the impeachment of former officials, and that is Professor Jonathan Turley. Let me show you what I mean. These are his words. First, in a very detailed study, thorough study, he explained that, quote, "The resignation from office does not prevent trial on articles of impeachment." That's Professor Turley's words. Same piece, he celebrated the Belknap trial. He described it as a corrective measure that helped the system regain legitimacy. He wrote another article. He's written several on this topic. This one is actually, it's a 146-page study, very detailed. And in that study, he said, quote, that the decision in Belknap was correct in its view that impeachment historically had extended to former officials, such as Warren Hastings, who you heard Lead Manager Raskin describe. In fact, as you can see, Professor Turley argued that the House could have impeached and the Senate could have tried Richard Nixon after he resigned. His quote on this, very telling, quote, "Future presidents could not assume that mere resignation would avoid a trial of their conduct in the United States Senate." Finally, last quote from Professor Turley, that no man in no circumstance can escape the account which he owes to the laws of his country. Not my words, not Lead Manager Raskin's words, Professor Jonathan Turley's words. I agree with him because he's exactly right. Now, a question one might reasonably ask after going through all those quotes from such noted jurists and scholars is, why is there such agreement on this topic? Well, the reason's pretty simple. Because it's what the Constitution says. I want to walk you through 3 provisions of the Constitution that make clear that the Senate must try this case. First, let's start with what the Constitution says about Congress's power in Article 1. You heard Lead Manager Raskin make this point, but it's worth underscoring. Article 1, Section 2 gives the House the sole power of impeachment. Article 1, Section 3 gives the Senate the sole power to try all impeachments. Now, based on President Trump's argument, one would think that language includes caveats, exceptions, but it doesn't. It doesn't say impeachment of current civil officers. It doesn't say impeachment of those still in office. The framers didn't mince words. They provided express, absolute, unqualified grants of jurisdictional power to the House to impeach and to the Senate to try all impeachments. Not some, all.